Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, saw this coming. One moment T.I., born Clifford Harris Jr., moved through Atlanta like the untouchable king of the city, a figure whose crown seemed unshakable. He had survived street beefs, federal cases, industry betrayals, and scandal after scandal, yet he carried himself with the confidence of someone whose legacy could not be touched. To fans, to peers, and even to rivals, he seemed untouchable, a man who had learned from his mistakes and transformed himself into an elder statesman of hip-hop. But almost overnight, that perception began to crumble. The foundation he had built, carefully, publicly, and over decades, started to fracture in ways that were both sudden and deeply personal. The entire internet was thrown into chaos, and the source of the pressure was not what anyone expected. It wasn't rival rappers plotting a takedown. It wasn't law enforcement agencies reopening old cases. And it wasn't even the industry gatekeepers whose influence could quietly shift a career. No, this storm came from a place closer to home, from voices that emerged from T.I.'s own city, Atlanta itself. Women, one by one, began stepping forward with stories, posting first-hand accounts, and sharing details of moments that had never been meant for public consumption. Each new voice added volume, and each story carried enough specificity to make fans and observers pause. These were not fabricated personas or anonymous accounts. These were people with deep roots in the city's music scene, individuals who had seen or been part of situations that left long-lasting impressions. At first, the posts were scattered, almost like isolated whispers. But as more women shared their experiences, a pattern began to emerge. The stories, while varied, shared common threads, accounts of coercion, of pressure, and of moments where the balance of power tipped dramatically in T.I.'s favor. Many of the experiences dated back years, resurfacing allegations that had never gained traction publicly. And suddenly, what might have remained contained within the city's music circles exploded into a national conversation. Just when it seemed the situation had reached its peak, 50 Cent entered the fray, and he did so with calculated intensity. He didn't comment quietly or take a distant approach. He amplified the stories, reposting videos, and adding commentary that cut like a blade. Clips resurfaced, interviews were revisited, and footage once considered benign was now analyzed under a new lens. 50 Cent's involvement turned a regional conversation into a nationwide spectacle. Timing, influence, and reach all aligned, escalating the situation in ways that were impossible to ignore. For anyone familiar with the history between the two rappers, the move made perfect sense. Their rivalry had simmered for years, subtle, competitive, and sometimes bitter, and 50 Cent's sharp amplification of these events now seemed almost inevitable. The internet naturally went into overdrive. Fans and casual observers alike asked the same questions. Were these accounts coincidental, or was this a coordinated effort? Did 50 Cent merely react to the stories, or was there some anticipation, some awareness that made his intervention so timely? While no one could confirm insider knowledge, many speculated that the momentum had been building quietly, under the radar, for months if not years. And when the first clips and posts gained traction, the speed at which the narrative spread was unprecedented. Social media had become the battleground, and no one could contain the conversation. To understand why this storm hit so hard, it's essential to consider who T.I. represented. He was not simply another rapper. He was a symbol, a figure whose rise from the streets to global prominence mirrored Atlanta itself. His narrative was one of hustle, survival, and eventual transformation. A man who had turned street credibility into mainstream success, then leveraged that success into acting, producing, and mentoring a new generation of artists. Over the years, he cultivated an image of wisdom, maturity, and family responsibility. He spoke openly about growth, about learning from past mistakes, about leadership, and about building something lasting. Fans invested not just in his music, but in his persona, the redeemed street king who had learned to navigate life's complexities without losing himself. Yet even the most carefully curated narratives have cracks. While T.I. publicly projected growth and responsibility, whispers of misconduct occasionally surfaced, long enough to leave a shadow of doubt, but never fully materialized into public reckoning. These murmurs were often vague, dismissed, or ignored, comments from insiders, fleeting interviews, or offhand remarks from those on the fringes of his circle. But social media changed everything. Platforms that once served to promote music or share brand messaging became spaces where direct voices could bypass gate. Eppers, once one woman spoke out, others found courage. Their stories began to intersect, revealing patterns and creating a cumulative effect that no single denial or narrative management could contain. Meanwhile, 50 Cent's amplification acted like a catalyst. Known for his instinctual timing, his ability to wait and strike when it counts, he transformed what might have remained a localized controversy into a story with national, even global visibility. The resurfaced footage, analyzed interviews, and commentary all converged to challenge T.I.'s carefully constructed image. Every post, every share, every clip contributed to a pressure that grew too powerful to ignore. The chain reaction was swift and merciless. Attempted narrative management by T.I. and his team, including denials, statements emphasizing consent, and attempts to pivot attention to other projects, was quickly overshadowed by the volume and persistence of voices. Clips and statements circulated faster than they could respond. The pattern of multiple women speaking out, combined with 50 Cent's strategic amplification, created a momentum that felt unstoppable. Fans and observers were forced to reconsider the once polished image of T.I. as an elder statesman of hip-hop, as a mentor, and a symbol of growth. The wave of allegations challenged the very foundation of his persona. As scrutiny intensified, the public began to ask uncomfortable questions. Could a man who had survived so many public battles, a man who had cultivated an image of accountability and maturity, also have a private side that contradicted everything he preached? Could the carefully managed persona have concealed behavior that only now was being revealed? These questions cut deeply, not only for T.I.'s supporters but for the cultural narrative surrounding hip-hop itself. The tension between fame, power, and accountability, and the complexity of reconciling public growth with private actions. The effect on Atlanta, in particular, was profound. The city that had once celebrated T.I. as a local hero now found itself divided. On one hand were those who viewed the allegations as attacks on a hometown figure who had helped elevate Atlanta's cultural status. On the other were those who felt that the stories represented overdue accountability, a recognition that power imbalances needed to be addressed, even if the person involved had long been a symbol of pride. For many, the scandal became a moment of reckoning, forcing a communal conversation about how power is wielded, protected, or challenged in tight-knit communities. At the heart of this narrative is the modern landscape of celebrity. No longer is a public figure shielded by carefully managed interviews, select media appearances, or personal networks. The immediacy of social media, combined with the courage of those willing to speak out, ensures that private actions can be amplified almost instantly. And when someone like 50 Cent enters the scene, the amplification is exponential. Each post, each video, each commentary clip contributes to a momentum that reshapes public perception in real time. T.I.'s past statements, which had once seemed genuine expressions of growth and accountability, were now dissected and reinterpreted. Every motivational message, every story of family resilience, every public acknowledgement of past mistakes was being examined under a harsher lens. Patterns were traced, coincidences analyzed, and inconsistencies highlighted. Fans who had once defended him found themselves divided. Some argued that the allegations were amplified by rivalry and opportunism. Others saw consistency and alignment in the narratives, interpreting silence, control, and strategic messaging as indications of deeper truths. The situation grew more complex as additional voices entered the discussion. Atlanta insiders, journalists, and cultural commentators weighed in, creating a multi-layered conversation that extended beyond the original allegations. Topics expanded to include gender dynamics in the industry, the culture of accountability, and how celebrity power can shield individuals from scrutiny for years. The debate became less about individual events and more about the structures, relationships, and networks that allowed these events to occur and remain hidden. Then came moments that intensified the public's engagement. Small, unfiltered live videos from local figures added immediacy and authenticity that studio interviews and edited statements lacked. One Atlanta-based woman went live, speaking with raw emotion, her voice trembling with years of pent-up frustration. "They think we were going to stay quiet forever," she said, her words cutting through the noise and challenging anyone who doubted the collective voices now emerging. That live stream, unpolished and direct, became a rallying point, reinforcing the notion that the stories were not isolated, not fabricated, and not subject to dismissal. The fallout had immediate consequences. And says, discussions about celebrity accountability intensified. Fans and industry observers began reevaluating past collaborations, partnerships, and public statements. T.I.'s allies, both in Atlanta and nationally, faced difficult decisions about support, loyalty, and distancing themselves from a rapidly evolving situation. Social media platforms became arenas of real-time analysis, speculation, and debate. Every post, comment, and share contributed to an ongoing reevaluation of T.I.'s legacy, reputation, and influence. Ultimately, what is unfolding is more than a scandal. It is a cultural reckoning. It is a story that merges the personal and the public, exposing tensions between power and accountability, perception and reality, growth and past actions. T.I. once symbolized a narrative of redemption and resilience. Now, his image is under scrutiny, challenged by voices that have long been silenced and amplified by forces both inside and outside the industry. The outcome remains uncertain. Legal, social, and cultural consequences are still in motion. The public narrative is shifting daily, informed by live accounts, leaks, commentary, and insider perspectives. Each new revelation has the potential to further fracture perceptions, redefine alliances, and reshape the understanding of both T.I.'s personal history and Atlanta's cultural landscape. As this story continues, one fact is undeniable. The narrative control has shifted. No longer confined to traditional media or curated public statements, the conversation is now driven by the collective voices of those who choose to speak, amplified by the reach of social media, and intensified by individuals like 50 Cent, whose interventions carry both timing and influence. The legacy T.I. worked decades to construct now faces its greatest test, not from external enemies, but from the very community that once celebrated him and the systems that allowed silence to persist for so long. Every observer is left to ask, how much was hidden behind carefully curated public appearances? How many voices were suppressed or ignored? And most importantly, what comes next? The answers remain unclear, but one thing is certain. The story is far from over. What began as scattered posts from local voices has evolved into a nationwide cultural reckoning, one that challenges assumptions, reshapes perceptions, and forces a community and an industry to confront uncomfortable truths. And in the midst of this, the internet watches, debates, and waits, knowing that each new post, leak, or statement could redefine everything once again. The crown that T.I. once wore with confidence now rests under intense scrutiny, and the unfolding chapters promise to test the limits of loyalty, truth, and legacy in ways few could have predicted. The single sentence made people lean in immediately. It didn't read like a spontaneous outburst or an impulsive rant. It carried the weight of something deliberate, calculated, and long overdue. Within minutes, the clip began spreading like wildfire across social media. Users clipped it, reposted it, and dissected every second. In the video, the woman didn't speak in vague generalities. She named T.I. directly, recounting alleged private encounters, conversations, and interactions with striking specificity. She described rooms, approximate dates, even the presence of other individuals. The details made it impossible for casual viewers to scroll past. And then came the line that froze the internet. "This wasn't just me." That single statement transformed what could have been a personal account into the beginning of a much larger narrative. Within hours, more women stepped forward, sharing stories that were not carbon copies but carried unnerving overlaps. Similar locations, intersecting timelines, and consistent patterns of behavior. The similarities prompted observers to pause and consider how multiple individuals could recount experiences that echoed each other so precisely. Skepticism quickly gave way to concern. Screenshots and alleged evidence soon began circulating. Messages, old photos, and voice notes appeared online, though none were fully verified at first. Each piece provided just enough smoke to fuel the fire. Social media, once it catches wind of controversy, rarely lets go. Twitter threads exploded, meticulously analyzing timelines, connecting past incidents, and resurfacing interviews that once seemed harmless. Content that had been created years ago, song lyrics, old clips, public statements, was now interpreted under a completely different lens. Moments that had seemed benign or even boastful took on darker undertones when recontextualized against these new allegations. The real turning point occurred when the conversation shifted from "is this true?" to the far more ominous question, "what if it is?" That was when 50 Cent entered the story, not with sympathy or restraint, but with the kind of presence that poured gasoline on an already raging fire. He posted one of the clips with a simple yet loaded caption, "Damn, Atlanta talking crazy right now." He didn't need to say more. When 50 Cent engages with a narrative, millions take notice instantly. Those who had missed the original video were now watching, debating, and sharing. He continued posting and commenting, subtly shaping the conversation while making it clear he was relishing the moment. As the chaos escalated, old material resurfaced. A long-forgotten interview of T.I. reappeared where he spoke casually, almost jokingly, about women, power, and influence. At the time, it had been dismissed as typical rap bravado. Now, in the shadow of the allegations, the same words were scrutinized with a far more critical eye. People began asking whether he had been signaling truths all along, hidden beneath humor and self-assured confidence. The narrative had shifted. This was no longer just about new allegations. It was about reinterpreting the past. Pressure mounted at a remarkable speed. Brands and sponsors were tagged and questioned publicly. Followers asked whether these companies still supported T.I., and insiders whispered unsettling rumors that he had allegedly been warned about these stories years earlier. Sources suggested that people close to him had known these accounts existed and had opportunities to address them privately, but reportedly they were ignored. Even if only partially true, the rumor intensified scrutiny. The conversation had evolved from "what happened" to the sharper, more damaging "what did he know and when did he know it?" Just as the intensity seemed to peak, a fourth woman stepped forward. Unlike the others, she appeared calm, almost unnervingly so. Her measured composure made every word land harder, giving her story a deliberate, almost rehearsed impact. Her opening line immediately sent chills through viewers. "I wasn't going to say anything, but now I have no choice." She claimed the existence of audio recordings, conversations that allegedly documented interactions beyond text messages or screenshots. According to her, these recordings suggested a pattern, a repeated behavior rather than isolated incidents. Within hours, the internet erupted. Clips, whether distorted, edited, or authentic, circulated widely. Users replayed them endlessly, debated their authenticity, and scrutinized every nuance. Is that really his voice? Could it have been manipulated? The frenzy fed itself, intensifying the conversation at a pace almost impossible to control. Amid this storm, two names dominated trending topics: T.I., of course, and 50 Cent, whose role had evolved from passive observer to narrative architect. He didn't merely repost videos. He curated which clips and angles gained traction, highlighting details that would provoke the most discussion while leaving other aspects out. Anyone familiar with his history recognizes this tactic. He doesn't simply react to chaos, he directs it, deciding which threads the public will follow. The combination of multiple accounts, alleged evidence, and calculated amplification created a perfect storm. What began as a single late-night live stream escalated into a national reckoning. Lyrics and interviews were dissected for hidden meaning, public statements were re-examined, and the discussion expanded far beyond individual allegations. It now encompassed systemic issues, power dynamics, consent, accountability in the music industry, and the ways in which behavior had been shielded by loyalty, fear, or silence. For T.I., the impact was profound. The narrative he had spent years building, street survivor turned family man and mentor, was under siege. These allegations directly challenged his image, forcing fans, collaborators, and the public to reconsider how they viewed him. Every attempt at damage control, every carefully worded denial, was overshadowed by the rapid accumulation of new stories and corroborating claims. Social media left little room for measured responses. The conversation was no longer about public relations. It was about truth, perception, and the consequences of long-standing patterns finally being exposed. Social media itself became a central player. Platforms that had once amplified celebrity branding now functioned as democratized courts, where ordinary voices held the power to challenge and reshape narratives. The women coming forward were clear that they were not seeking fame. Many had remained silent for years until something, a tipping point, a growing network of shared experiences, or the audacity of one final post, propelled them to speak publicly. Their courage inspired others, triggering a cascade of additional accounts that compounded scrutiny. The tension in public perception grew. Some interpreted the events as a coordinated attack, possibly fueled by old rivalries and opportunistic interventions. Others viewed it as overdue accountability, a reckoning in a community and industry that had historically allowed certain behavior or as to persist unchecked. Likely, the reality was somewhere in between, complicated by personal histories, selective memories, and the distorting lens of viral attention. The scale of the response was unprecedented. A single raw video had ignited a nationwide conversation, forcing a reevaluation of T.I.'s public persona and his decades-long narrative. Fans and critics alike found themselves diving into years of content, lyrics, interviews, social media posts, and video footage. Each detail, no matter how minor, was interpreted under this new framework. The story had outgrown its origin, morphing from a personal account to a cultural phenomenon. 50 Cent escalated the situation further. He posted a side-by-side comparison, an old interview of T.I. alongside a recent clip of one of the allegations. His caption read simply, "This aging different now." It was brief, yet devastatingly effective. People immediately started connecting dots across years of content, analyzing tone, context, and body language. The conversation shifted from emotional reaction to analytical dissection. The implication was clear. The past, once shielded by charisma and public performance, could now be scrutinized with an intensity that was impossible to evade. Insiders began leaking additional details. They claimed that some of the women had attempted to speak out years prior, only to be silenced, not through overt threats but through subtler forms of pressure. Warnings, discouragements, and veiled suggestions that going public could damage their own futures allegedly kept them quiet. There was no definitive proof, yet the claims alone altered public perception. The story became less about isolated allegations and more about the interplay of power and suppression, raising questions about who had the ability to remain silent and who did not. Mainstream media soon followed. Blogs, YouTube channels, and commentators dissected every piece of information. Discussions polarized quickly. Some celebrated the reckoning as a long overdue correction in a culture that often rewarded influence over accountability. Others criticized it as a coordinated attack on a successful black man, driven by rivalry and opportunism. Regardless of viewpoint, the scale of attention was undeniable. Then came a chilling revelation. A user highlighted a detail connecting two women who had come forward. They had allegedly been in the same location on the same night, years apart, each linked to claims involving T.I. The coincidence, or pattern, raised immediate questions about broader networks, systemic behavior, and previously hidden connections. Suddenly, the conversation shifted from individual experiences to a more ominous and far-reaching inquiry. How deeply did this go, and who else might be implicated? The narrative now operated on multiple levels. It was about T.I.'s alleged behavior, the timing and involvement of other figures like 50 Cent, and the broader implications for power structures in the music industry. Social media allowed fans, journalists, and insiders to collaborate in real time, amplifying details, uncovering patterns, and building a collective understanding faster than traditional channels ever could. Every post, screenshot, and analysis contributed to a growing sense that this story was bigger than any single allegation. For T.I., the stakes were existential. The image of the street survivor turned mentor was under siege, challenged not only by current allegations, but by a re-examination of past statements, behaviors, and choices. Every former ally and collaborator faced a choice: defend, distance, or remain silent. The unfolding events forced a re-evaluation of loyalty, credibility, and the limits of reinvention. Meanwhile, social media amplified the human dimension. Ordinary people participated in debates about power, consent, and accountability. Observers dissected public appearances and old footage. Fans who had once revered T.I. grappled with a complex mix of admiration, disappointment, and skepticism. Some questioned whether charisma and talent could ever absolve problematic behavior. Others argued that long-term patterns, when confirmed, demanded accountability regardless of past contributions. At the center of it all, 50 Cent remained a master of timing and influence. His role was not only to amplify but to guide the focus of the conversation. By choosing which clips to share, which angles to emphasize, and which elements to ignore, he shaped public perception while keeping attention locked on T.I. The effect was cumulative and strategic, ensuring that no single narrative could dominate for long. The story continues to unfold. Each new post, video, or insider account adds another layer to a complex narrative that blends personal allegations, industry politics, and public fascination. The internet watches in real time, analyzing, debating, and waiting for the next revelation. One thing is undeniable: the narrative that once protected T.I., fully cultivated over decades, is gone. Social media, once a tool for brand building, has become a force of relentless scrutiny. Even now, the conversation is evolving. The question has moved beyond whether the allegations are true. It is now about accountability, legacy, and the structures that enabled silence. Whether T.I. responds, whether new evidence emerges, or whether the wave eventually subsides, the impact is permanent. A single live stream, amplified and analyzed, has transformed a carefully constructed narrative into a national dialogue about power, influence, and the consequences of long-held secrecy. The public now waited anxiously, anticipating the next revelation, the next leak, or the next voice stepping forward. The knowledge that other significant individuals had yet to speak added tension to an already volatile situation. When those voices emerged, or if more concrete evidence surfaced, everything so far might pale in comparison. The story's complexity forced the audience to confront difficult questions. Whose side are you on? Do you interpret the situation as the truth finally emerging, a reckoning with a pattern of protected behavior? Or do you see it as a coordinated attack, a calculated effort that the public has yet to fully understand? Similarly, 50 Cent's role was ambiguous. Was he merely amplifying events for strategic chaos, or was he an informed participant shaping the narrative behind the scenes? The situation remained far from resolved. Too many questions persisted, too many pieces missing, and too many individuals yet to break their silence. The speed at which new information surfaced meant the narrative could shift dramatically with a single post, a single leak, or a single interview. For viewers, the lesson was clear: stay engaged. Follow updates, examine evidence, and track patterns. One post could alter public perception completely. One leak could redefine the entire story. In Atlanta's hip-hop community and beyond, this saga had already left a permanent mark. It was a collision of power, influence, silence, and the unforgiving scrutiny of the digital age. The public remained deeply divided. Emotions ran high. Allegations were weighed, analyzed, and debated in real time. The story's outcome, whether accountability, vindication, or something more nuanced, would leave a lasting imprint on the reputations involved. Power, silence, loyalty, betrayal, and the pervasive nature of social media collided in one public arena, and the next development, wherever it came from, had the potential to rewrite the entire narrative. One certainty emerged: the chess pieces were still in motion. More voices were waiting. More evidence could surface. And whatever emerged next had the capacity to redefine the story completely. For T.I., for the women involved, for 50 Cent, and for the public observing from every corner of the globe, the saga was far from over. The story that began with a single late-night livestream had transformed into a multi-layered, high-stakes drama encompassing the personal, the professional, and the systemic. It had evolved into a conversation about culture, accountability, power, and perception. A conversation that would continue to unfold in real time, with each new revelation shifting the balance of opinion and altering the course of Atlanta's hip-hop history. The situation intensified further as the ripple effects extended beyond social media. Insider accounts began surfacing quietly, almost like whispers in the wind, claiming that some of T.I.'s associates had been aware of these allegations years ago. They reportedly had opportunities to intervene privately, to mitigate the fallout or prevent certain behaviors, but allegedly did not. Whether true or exaggerated, the notion that people close to him had ignored warnings added another layer of intrigue and anger to the public perception. The conversation shifted from what happened to who knew and why did they stay silent. This subtle recalibration made the audience scrutinize not just T.I., but the ecosystem surrounding him: managers, friends, collaborators, and even industry gatekeepers. Social media continued to act as the accelerant. Clips, screenshots, and posts were dissected endlessly. Users compared timestamps, cross-referenced interviews, and even began revisiting lyrics for hidden meanings that might corroborate or contradict the allegations. The scrutiny wasn't limited to the content itself. It extended to behavior. Every smile, every joke, every public interaction was reinterpreted through a lens of suspicion. Moments that once seemed mundane now carried implications of accountability, or worse, cover-up. 50 Cent's role remained central, a combination of provocateur and curator. His posts were no longer just amplification, they were precision tools. He highlighted moments that fed into the emerging narrative, juxtaposed old material against new claims, and sometimes simply observed silently while the public drew their own conclusions. His influence was magnified by his reputation. Fans knew that when he involved himself in a story, it wasn't casual. It was part of a larger, deliberate strategy. Meanwhile, mainstream media coverage escalated the stakes further. Major outlets began reporting not just on the allegations, but on the cultural implications. Headlines framed the story in ways that ensured it could not be ignored. Atlanta hip-hop faces reckoning over allegations. T.I.'s silence fuels speculation online. 50 Cent amplifies growing controversy. The coverage turned the narrative into a matter of public record, meaning that even casual observers were now participants in the conversation. Every post, tweet, and comment fed the cycle of attention, generating new reactions that in turn became news themselves. The ripple effect extended into professional consequences. Scheduled appearances, endorsements, and collaborations began quietly disappearing. Artists, brands, and venues associated with T.I. faced pressure to respond. Social media users relentlessly tagged corporate accounts, demanding accountability. Even companies with no direct ties to the allegations were forced into a form of participation by public scrutiny. The modern landscape of celebrity accountability meant that silence was interpreted as complicity, and every decision, or indecision, was magnified by the glare of public attention. Amid all this chaos, the pattern of multiple women coming forward became increasingly important. Each story, while unique, shared overlapping details, similar locations, timelines, and descriptions of behavior. The repetition lent credibility to the allegations and suggested that this was more than isolated incidents. For many observers, the narrative shifted. It was no longer just a matter of one person's actions. It was a structural issue, reflective of the power dynamics embedded in a highly competitive, celebrity-driven industry. Then came the introduction of alleged evidence in the form of audio clips. These were purportedly recordings of conversations that substantiated elements of the women's claims. Unlike screenshots or text messages, audio carries a sense of immediacy and reality that text cannot replicate. Even when partially distorted or edited, the clips sparked fierce debate. People replayed them, enhanced them, and argued endlessly over authenticity. Is that really his voice? It sounds edited. Listen again. Notice the tone. The online discourse evolved into a forensic-level analysis, with users attempting to reconstruct events minute by minute. The tension between the online and offline worlds intensified further when rumors emerged about potential legal action. Hints of official investigations began to circulate. No confirmation was issued, but the mere suggestion added urgency and credibility to the allegations. Suddenly, what had begun as an online conversation risked spilling over into real-world consequences: courtrooms, depositions, and investigations. The public began watching not just for social media updates, but for any sign of official action. In this environment, 50 Cent's strategic role became even more pronounced. His posts were less about humor or trolling, and increasingly about shaping the public's perception of timing, narrative, and credibility. He highlighted specific clips, curated the order in which material surfaced, and drew attention to inconsistencies or admissions in past content. Every interaction from him was analyzed for hidden meaning. Fans debated whether he was simply orchestrating chaos, or if he was a key player in a deeper strategy to control the flow of information. The public response evolved into what could only be described as a collective obsession. Users who had never interacted with T.I.'s work began following every development. Longtime fans, critics, and casual observers alike engaged in detailed dissections, tracking minute details across social media platforms. The phenomenon demonstrated the power of the digital age. A single narrative could explode globally in hours, with millions participating in real time. Amidst this online storm, a quiet but potent factor emerged: the remaining voices who had yet to speak. Whispers suggested that other individuals, potentially with more direct knowledge or corroborating accounts, were watching closely before deciding whether to come forward. This potential for future revelations added a constant tension. Every post, leak, or rumor could suddenly shift the story again, meaning that what seemed like the peak of the saga might only be the beginning. This complex interplay of social media, celebrity influence, alleged evidence, and potential legal ramifications made the story multidimensional. It was not just about T.I. or 50 Cent. It was about the industry, power, accountability, and the public's ability to influence narrative. The line between entertainment and real-world consequence blurred completely, creating a space where rumor, speculation, and truth collided in real time. In addition to the social and professional consequences, the cultural ramifications became increasingly significant. The story forced discussions about power imbalance in the music industry, the protection afforded to influential men, and the mechanisms that allowed alleged behaviors to persist unchecked. Conversations about accountability, ethics, and public perception moved to the forefront, making this more than just a celebrity scandal. It was a reflection of systemic issues that extended beyond any one individual. For T.I., for the women involved, for 50 Cent, and for the countless observers, the saga remained alive, a story defined as much by what was revealed as by what remained hidden. And in this digital era, where attention is the currency and narrative is power, everyone knew one thing: the next move could redefine everything once again.